Let's take a look at the future. It's evolution. You've had a hard day at work, you drive your EV vehicle back, you want to park effortlessly and sleep. Easier said than done because after almost a decade, they've got nothing right. This is an aftermarket accessory, one pad for each car. What is interoperability? So they have a bunch of problems. The first problem, they've been trying to do it for years with a spiral on spiral coil. The problem with that is it barely works if it's not aligned perfectly. And the metal behind it, it can't handle. So you need a heavy shielding. And that reduces the miles per gallon. Very similar to what you have in Qi. What they didn't tell you is if you put a phone, not only do you have heavy shielding, but you also have a hot battery, which tries to protect itself by reducing the charging rate to 3.5 watts. But they didn't tell you that, did they? Now, somebody said let's do the same thing for EV charging, and the result is predictable. Ouch. Cars, too, the same way, the same user experience. You gotta be kidding. Do you have such big hands? This is familiar. You have just upscaled your mistakes to kilowatt levels, bigger mistakes. And don't think that they always know what they're doing. It's embarrassingly true. So, what's the solution? Why not this? Drive in effortlessly onto a new type of transmitter pad, a new type of receiver coil which gets to work for you. Metal underside is no problem at all because the flux is horizontal. The coil is extremely light. You'll get the maximum miles per charge, all because of our proprietary magnetics, where we put two coils of opposite polarity, and on top of it, a receiver coil which is tiny and slim, adds no weight to the car, and is the cheapest too. You get very high flux density and highest power, inherently aligned with insensitive because the flux lines follow it. Plus, with very smart tracking firmware, and the receiver coil is the most efficient. Metals on the underside of the car are no problem because the flux is horizontal. Problem number two they just didn't understand the shifting of the resonant peak as a function of load and coupling, which is clearance. Only we seem to have understood that and adapted to it. We did a lot of MathCAD simulations, simplest simulations, lab experiments, and the firmware is extremely complicated. It is an auto-tuning firmware which adapts every millisecond to any clearance, any load to deliver the maximum power with the maximum efficiency, irrespective of alignment and clearance. Resonance is tricky, and our firmware was written in a way it's instantly scalable overnight to kilowatts. Only we have this firmware. Only we at ChargeEdge understood nature and adapted. Result, you will drive in effortlessly, park freely. The firmware and magnetics is going to do the heavy lifting for you. And as mentioned, the flux is horizontal. Easy alignment, no problems. Park it freely. It's very forgiving. Laterally, sideways. Your grandma could have parked this. Think. You don't want separate charging pads for different makes and models, do you? But that's exactly where they are today, because they do not have our adaptive intelligence, and only we can offer that going forward. Our firmware is scalable overnight. Our hardware is being scaled as we speak. And it'll adapt to any clearance vehicle, whether you have a Hummer or a low-slung sports car parked any way. We derive the maximum benefit from the available circuitry and the available magnetics. The maximum efficiency, the maximum power. We auto-tune. They will demonstrate power for one clearance. Put in another car and gone. All the power is mysteriously gone. Only we adapt to any clearance. You don't want a separate charging pad for a separate car, and every time you buy a new car, you have to change your entire wireless charging system. That makes absolutely no sense. We understood how the resonant peak changes, and we adapt. Nobody else does that very clearly. They had another problem which they didn't talk about. They are struggling with something called foreign object detection. That is, small metal objects which can heat up and cause a safety issue. They have tried to solve it with tiny coils, some Q factor pinging, which has affected interoperability for the Qi standard. We have the world's best FOD already working from our lab in Germany. A tiny washer is being picked up, the red light goes on. But you put a receiver and it's a different light, the green light goes on. That was developed by Akin in Germany. Tiny metals are distinguished. There is no need for communication. There is nobody who has such a smart FOD. But they had another problem too. It's problem number 4, cost. Now, surprisingly, we have eliminated the secondary side resonant network. We don't have it. It's proprietary. We will just put it this way. It not only saves cost, but adds a lot of reliability. And it's future proof. You don't want to install something which is not suited for the highway of tomorrow. The highway of tomorrow, our magnetics is perfectly suited for. It's a longitudinal receiver coil. The future will look like this. You will drive over it, any vehicle, a high clearance vehicle, a low clearance vehicle, and this is inherently alignment insensitive, and XYZ movement is all very flexible, unlike the solutions they have come up with today. So this is obviously going to be the future of EV charging. You will drive into a mall, the same receiver coil will pick up the signal in a parked stationary space, activate a payment portal. You will fix 30 minutes, 60 minutes shopping experience, get a discount, and shop and come back while your car is being charged. And the highway too will deliver power as you drive. That has to be the future, and only our magnetic is inherently suited for that. That's charge.